let me ask you something that might change how you see everything. What if the angel responsible for your final breath has been questioning his own purpose since the moment he was chosen? Most people assume angels simply obey without hesitation, that celestial beings carry out God's will with perfect peace. But Scripture hints at something far more complex, and ancient texts reveal an angel whose appointment to death was not met with acceptance, but with doubt. In this narrative, we will walk through 3 revelations. First, you will discover how Azrael was chosen and why no other angel could bear this burden. Second, you will witness the transformation that stripped away his innocence and turned him into the shadow between worlds. And third, you will see how his story connects to every death recorded in Scripture, including yours. And once we understand this first layer, the real story begins. Heaven's council chamber is not a place of chaos. Every angel knows their assignment. Gabriel carries messages across realms. Michael leads the armies against darkness. Raphael brings healing to the broken. Each celestial being fits perfectly into the divine design, singing praises, executing commands, maintaining the order that holds creation together. But there exists one responsibility that no angel volunteers for, one mission that brings silence even among the seraphim, the task of ending life. Azrael stands in the center of the chamber. He does not know why he has been summoned. Around him, the greatest of the archangels wait in solemn attention. Gabriel's face shows no emotion, though his eyes carry something close to pity. Michael stands with his arms crossed, the weight of understanding already heavy on his shoulders. They know what Azrael does not yet comprehend. They know what is about to be asked of him. When God's voice fills the chamber, it does not boom with anger or whisper with gentleness. It simply is, a presence that cannot be resisted or misunderstood. The words are clear and final. Azrael will become the angel of death. He will be the one who severs the bond between body and soul. He will determine the moment when each human breath becomes the last. He will carry every departing spirit from the land of the living into what lies beyond. Azrael's first response is not obedience. It is shock. His wings tremble, not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of what is being declared. He asks the question that burns in his core. Why him? Why now? What has he done to deserve this weight? Michael steps forward and speaks with the authority of one who has led armies since creation's dawn. Azrael was not chosen for his strength. He was not selected because of valor in battle or wisdom in council. He was appointed because of something far rarer among the heavenly host: balance, impartiality, the ability to stand between life and death without being swayed by emotion or attachment. Gabriel adds his perspective. The destiny of human souls cannot depend on feelings. It cannot be influenced by personal preference or momentary compassion. Death must be administered with perfect fairness, without corruption, without bias. Only Azrael, who has walked through the cold void and returned, who has known the silence that exists before creation and after ending, only he possesses the temperament required for this eternal task. But Azrael does not feel chosen. He feels condemned. He looks at Gabriel and asks if this burden is not too great. He turns to Michael and wonders aloud if another angel, one stronger or more willing, could take this cup from him. The response comes not from the archangels, but from God himself. The balance of life and death cannot be altered. The chaos that would erupt if any other angel assumed this position would unravel the fabric of existence itself. Azrael is not being punished. He is being entrusted with the will of divine judgment. From the depths of the firmament, dark clouds begin to gather. These are not storm clouds. They are something older, something that exists on the edge of heaven's light. Figures emerge from the shadows, the heralds of death, angelic beings who oversee the darkest judgments, who have witnessed every plague, every catastrophe, every moment when God's mercy gives way to justice. They wear masks that hide their faces, and their voices carry the weight of millennia. The heralds speak in unison. To truly become the angel of death, Azrael must prove his will. This destiny is not given freely. It must be earned through trial. He must understand what he will be required to do, and he must choose to accept it with full knowledge of the cost. They show him visions, not gentle images of peaceful transitions, but the raw reality of human mortality. He sees battlefields soaked in blood. He watches children dying in their mother's arms. He observes the old gasping for final breaths in lonely rooms. He witnesses murder, disease, accident, and betrayal. The endless cycle of human suffering plays out before his eyes in vivid, unrelenting detail. One of the heralds steps closer and speaks directly to Azrael. Humans are not only subject to physical death, they create their own condemnation through choices, through actions, through the accumulation of sin and rebellion. Azrael's task will not simply be escorting peaceful souls to rest. He will have to make decisions. He will have to separate those who deserve peace from those who have earned judgment. Death will not always be liberation. For some, it will be the beginning of something far worse. The weight of this revelation crashes down on Azrael like a collapsing star. He realizes that his role is not passive. He will not merely be a guide. He will be an executioner, a judge, a force of divine will that operates without mercy or second chances. God speaks once more, and this time the command is absolute. Azrael will descend to the mortal world. He will walk among humans. He will witness their struggles firsthand. Only by experiencing death in the realm where it has power will he fully understand the burden of his destiny. Only then will he be ready to carry out his eternal mission. Subscribe now, because what happens next will reveal the transformation that changed Azrael forever. Chapter 2. The Burden No Angel Wanted. The descent from heaven is not a journey through space. It is a passage through states of being. Azrael feels himself pulled away from the light, away from the songs of the seraphim, away from the presence that has defined his existence since the moment of his creation. For the first time in his eternal life, he experiences something that angels are not meant to feel: isolation. Earth appears below him, a sphere of blues and greens and browns, spinning in the vast darkness of the cosmos. From this distance, it looks peaceful, beautiful even. But Azrael knows what lies beneath that tranquil surface: pain, struggle, the relentless march of mortality that claims every living thing born into flesh. He passes through layers of atmosphere, through clouds and wind and rain. He sees cities sprawling across continents, tiny lights flickering in the darkness like dying embers. Each light represents a life. Each life will one day require his presence. The enormity of it threatens to overwhelm him. When his feet touch the ground for the first time, he is standing in a village. Small houses line dirt roads. Smoke rises from chimneys. The smell of cooking food drifts on the breeze. Everything seems so normal, so mundane. But Azrael can see what the mortals cannot. He can perceive the threads of life connecting each soul to the divine source, and he can see when those threads begin to fray. In one of the houses, an old man lies on a simple bed. His breathing is labored, his skin pale. Family members surround him, their faces etched with grief and exhaustion. They have been watching him fade for days, praying for a miracle that will not come. His time has arrived. The thread of his life is barely holding, ready to snap at any moment. Azrael stands at the threshold, invisible to mortal eyes. He watches the scene unfold. The old man's wife holds his hand, whispering words of comfort. His children weep quietly. His grandchildren stand at the doorway, too young to fully understand, but old enough to feel the sadness that fills the room. This is what death looks like from the mortal perspective: loss, ending, the tearing away of someone beloved. But Azrael must see it from another angle. He must understand that death is not the enemy mortals believe it to be. It is a release, a transition. The soul's return to its source. He steps forward, though no one sees him move. He extends his hand, and for the first time, he touches a human soul. The sensation is unlike anything he has experienced. The soul is warm, luminous, carrying within it the accumulated experiences of a lifetime. Memories, emotions, choices, regrets, joys, all of it compressed into a single point of consciousness. The moment Azrael makes contact, the old man's breathing stops. The thread snaps. The soul begins to separate from the body, rising slowly like smoke from a candle flame. The family members cry out, shaking the man's body, calling his name. But he is already gone. His soul hovers in the air, confused, disoriented, not yet understanding what has happened. Azrael speaks, though his voice does not make sound in the mortal realm. It is a whisper that only the soul can hear. Your time has come. You must follow me now. The soul resists at first, looking back at the body it inhabited for so many years, at the family weeping below. But Azrael's presence is undeniable. The pull is too strong to fight. Slowly, reluctantly, the soul turns away from the life it knew and follows the angel of death into the unknown. As they move through the veil between worlds, Azrael feels the weight of what he has just done. He has ended a life. He has separated a soul from everything it loved. And this is only the first. There will be billions more. An endless procession of souls requiring his attention, his judgment, his guidance into eternity. When he returns to heaven, the transformation has already begun. He feels different, colder. The warmth that once filled his being has been replaced by something else. Duty, purpose, the understanding that emotions cannot interfere with his mission. Gabriel and Michael are waiting for him. They see the change in his eyes. The light that once shone there has dimmed, replaced by a distant, calculating gaze. Michael places a hand on Azrael's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity and sympathy. Gabriel remains silent, knowing that words cannot ease the burden his brother now carries. God speaks to Azrael once more, and this time the tone is final. You have taken your first soul. You have proven your ability to carry out this mission. From this moment forward, you are the angel of death. You will walk between worlds. You will be present at every ending. You will guide countless souls from flesh to spirit, from time to eternity. Your judgment will be infallible. Your resolve must remain unshaken. There is no compassion in death, Azrael. There is only the fulfillment of divine will. Azrael bows his head in acceptance. The doubts that plagued him in the council chamber have not disappeared, but they have been buried beneath the weight of necessity. He understands now that questioning his role will not change it. Resistance will not free him. This is his eternity. This is what he was created to do. But deep within, in a place even the heralds of death cannot see, a small spark of his former self remains. A fragment of the angel who asked why, a piece of the being who felt compassion and wondered if there might be another way. That spark will fade over time, ground down by the endless cycle of death and judgment. But for now, it still flickers, still questions, still hopes that perhaps somewhere in the vast expanse of eternity, there might be meaning in the suffering he is required to oversee. Like this video if you are beginning to see death in a new light, and stay with me because the transformation is about to become complete. Chapter 3. The Test of the Void. The heralds of death do not leave Azrael to discover his powers through trial and error. They understand that the angel of death must be forged through fire, shaped by experiences that would shatter lesser beings. And so, before Azrael can fully assume his role, he must face the test of the void. The void is not a place. It is the absence of place. It exists outside heaven, outside earth, outside time itself. It is the primordial darkness that existed before God spoke light into being. It is the nothingness from which creation emerged and to which all things might one day return if the divine will ever falters. Azrael is brought to the edge of existence and commanded to enter. The heralds explain that within the void he will face the true nature of death, not the gentle release he witnessed in the old man's passing, but death in its purest, most absolute form, annihilation, the complete cessation of being. He hesitates at the threshold. Every instinct screams at him to turn back, to refuse, to find another path. But he knows there is no other path. This is the crucible that will either forge him into the angel of death or destroy him entirely. He steps forward into the darkness, and immediately everything he is begins to dissolve. His form, his thoughts, his memories, the light of his angelic nature is swallowed by the void's infinite hunger. He feels himself coming apart, fragmenting, losing coherence. In the mortal world, this would be called terror. In heaven, it has no name because angels are not supposed to experience it. Within the void, Azrael encounters echoes, not souls, but the impressions left behind by things that once existed and now do not. Entire civilizations reduced to faint whispers, worlds that burned out before humanity's first ancestor drew breath, beings of such power and majesty that their names would shatter mortal minds, now nothing more than fading ripples in the darkness. He hears voices, or perhaps they are his own thoughts turning against him. They ask questions he has no answers for. What gives you the right to end life? Who are you to stand between a soul and its final moment? Do you believe you are just? Do you believe you are good? Or are you simply another instrument of cruelty, dressed in divine authority? The void shows him visions of what he will become. He sees himself standing over the bodies of children struck down by plague. He watches himself guide the souls of the innocent who died in wars they did not start, for causes they did not believe in. He witnesses his own hand reaching out to claim the lives of those who spent their final moments screaming for mercy that will not come. Is this justice? Is this the divine plan? Or is death simply the ultimate act of violence made acceptable because it wears the mask of inevitability? Azrael wants to scream, to rage against the void and everything it represents. But he has no voice here. He has no form. He is being unmade, and there is nothing he can do to stop it. Then, in the deepest part of the darkness, he finds something unexpected: silence. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of peace. A stillness so profound that it transcends all struggle, all questions, all doubt. In that silence he understands. Death is not violence, it is release. It is the end of suffering, the cessation of striving, the return to the peace that existed before consciousness created the illusion of separation from God. Every soul that fears death fears it because they cling to the illusion of individual existence. They believe they are their bodies, their memories, their achievements and failures. But in truth, they are something far greater. They are fragments of the divine, temporarily separated, experiencing the illusion of mortality so that they might one day return home with a deeper understanding of what it means to be. Azrael's role is not to destroy. It is to guide souls back to the truth they forgot when they entered flesh. Death is the doorway through which the illusion ends and reality begins. With this understanding, Azrael stops resisting. He surrenders to the void, and in surrendering, he is reborn. His form reconstitutes, but it is no longer the same. His wings, once radiant with the light of heaven, are now black as the space between stars. His eyes, once filled with warmth, now reflect the cold clarity of absolute truth. A cloak materializes around his shoulders, woven from the fabric of the void itself. When he emerges from the darkness, the heralds of death bow their heads in acknowledgement. He has passed the test. He has confronted the ultimate truth of mortality and emerged not broken, but transformed. He is no longer an angel who has been given a task. He is the embodiment of the task itself. He is death. Gabriel and Michael are waiting when he returns. They do not speak. There are no words that can bridge the gap between what Azrael was and what he has become. He is still their brother, still a servant of God, but he now walks a path they cannot follow. He exists in the space between heaven and earth, between life and eternity, and he will walk that space alone for as long as creation endures. God's voice resonates through the chamber one final time. You are ready, Azrael. The moment has come for you to begin your eternal mission. Go now into the world of men. When a soul's time has ended, you will know. You will feel it as clearly as you feel my presence now. Go and fulfill your purpose. Azrael spreads his dark wings and descends once more to earth. But this time he does not go as an observer. He goes as an executor of divine will. The angel of death has been born, and nothing in creation will ever be the same. Comment below if you have ever wondered what it feels like to encounter death, because what comes next will show you exactly that. Chapter 4. Becoming the Shadow Time moves differently for angels than for mortals. A century can pass in what feels like a moment. A single day can stretch into eternity. For Azrael, time becomes something else entirely. It becomes a measurement of souls. Days are no longer counted by sunrises, but by the number of lives that end. Years are marked not by seasons, but by plagues, wars, and the quiet passings that happen in the dark hours before dawn. He learns quickly that death is not uniform. Every ending is unique. Some souls depart peacefully, their threads of life simply fraying and breaking without struggle. Others fight, clinging desperately to flesh, even as their bodies fail. Some welcome him, having lived long and full lives, ready to see what lies beyond. Others curse him, rage at him, beg him for more time that he cannot give. Azrael develops a method. He approaches each soul with the same detached efficiency. No words of comfort, no explanations, no promises about what awaits them. His task is not to ease their transition, but to ensure it happens. The moment he touches a soul, the separation begins. Body and spirit divide. The thread snaps. Life becomes memory. In the beginning, he still feels echoes of his former self, when he claims the life of a young mother, leaving her children orphaned. Something inside him twitches with what might be called regret. When he guides the soul of a child who never had the chance to grow, a faint whisper of sorrow passes through him. But these feelings are obstacles. They slow him down. They introduce doubt into a process that must be absolute. The heralds of death visit him regularly, observing his work, ensuring he does not falter. They remind him that compassion is a luxury he can no longer afford. Every soul he hesitates to claim disrupts the balance. Every moment he spends questioning his role creates ripples that spread through the fabric of creation. Death must be efficient. Death must be final. Death must be without mercy. Gradually, the echoes fade. The twitches of regret become weaker. The whispers of sorrow grow silent. Azrael transforms from an angel carrying out a duty into something else entirely. He becomes the duty itself. His identity merges with his purpose. There is no longer a distinction between Azrael the angel and Death the force. They are one. His appearance reflects this transformation. His face, once expressive and full of light, becomes a mask of emotionless stone. His eyes, which once held curiosity and wonder, become windows into the void. His presence brings cold into any space he enters. Mortals cannot see him, but they feel him. Animals sense his approach and flee. Even other angels, when they encounter him in the borderlands between realms, instinctively keep their distance. He is no longer one of them. He is other, set apart, alone in a way that even the most isolated hermit can never truly understand. Centuries pass, then millennia. Azrael walks through every age of human history, his dark wings spread over countless deathbeds. He is there when empires fall. He is present when plagues sweep through cities, claiming thousands in a single day. He stands on battlefields where the ground is soaked with blood, guiding souls by the hundreds, by the thousands, his hand moving with mechanical precision. He witnesses love and he witnesses hate. He sees acts of breathtaking nobility and depths of cruelty that defy comprehension. He watches humans build and destroy, create and annihilate, love and murder, often within the span of a single lifetime, and through it all, he remains unchanged, untouched, unmoved. The only constant in his existence is the work. There is always another soul waiting, always another thread to sever, always another life reaching its end. The cycle never stops, never slows, never gives him a moment to pause and reflect. Perhaps that is by design. Perhaps God knew that an angel of death who had time to think would be an angel of death who might refuse to continue. But there are moments, brief and rare, when something breaks through the armor of his indifference, a soul that reminds him of who he used to be, a death that carries such profound injustice that even his cold heart registers a flicker of something that might once have been anger. These moments do not last, they cannot last, but they prove that somewhere, buried beneath layers of duty and detachment, the original Azrael still exists, dormant, silent, waiting for a reason to reawaken that may never come. In heaven, Gabriel and Michael continue their own missions, their own eternal tasks. Occasionally, their paths cross with Azrael's. These encounters are brief and awkward. Gabriel still tries to speak to him as a brother, asking how he endures the burden. Azrael's responses are curt, factual, devoid of emotion. Michael no longer tries to reach him at all, recognizing that the angel he once knew is gone, replaced by something necessary but unknowable. God watches all of this unfold with the patience of eternity. The Creator does not intervene, does not offer comfort or explanation. The role of death is meant to be isolating. It must be, or else it could not be performed. An angel of death who maintained close ties to the other angels, who remained emotionally connected to the beings of heaven, would be compromised. His judgments might waver, his hand might hesitate, and in the realm of death, hesitation is the same as failure. So Azrael remains alone, the shadow that follows every living thing from birth to grave, the presence that mortals sense but cannot name, the inevitability that no prayer can prevent, no bargain can delay, no power can overcome. He has become exactly what he was always meant to be, and in becoming that, he has lost everything else. Share this video with someone who needs to understand that death is not the enemy, and keep watching because we are about to enter the biblical accounts where Azrael's presence shaped history itself. Chapter 5. The First Soul and the Weight of Eternity. The first soul Azrael claimed after his full transformation was not a king or a warrior or a prophet. It was a farmer, a man whose name is not recorded in any scripture, whose life was unremarkable by every measure that humans use to judge significance. He tended fields, raised a family, laughed with neighbors, and grew old in the slow, steady way that most lives unfold. When his time came, Azrael appeared in the small room where the man lay dying. The farmer's wife sat beside the bed, her hand resting on his. His children stood at the doorway, their faces drawn with grief. The man's breathing had become shallow, labored. His body was shutting down, system by system, the way all bodies eventually do. Azrael watched for a moment, observing the scene with the detachment he had cultivated. This was not tragedy. This was not tragedy. This was simply completion, a life lived fully, reaching its natural end. The man had experienced joy and sorrow, success and failure, love and loss. He had raised children who would carry his legacy forward. He had lived according to the light he was given. By every reasonable measure, this was a good death. But when Azrael reached out to take the man's soul, something unexpected happened. The farmer's spirit resisted, not with violence or fear, but with a quiet, stubborn determination. He looked directly at Azrael, though mortals are not supposed to be able to see the angel of death, and he spoke, "Not yet, please. Just a little more time." Azrael had heard these words before in countless variations. Every soul that was not ready to depart asked for more time. It was as predictable as the sunrise, but something in the farmer's voice gave him pause. There was no panic in it, no desperation, just a simple, honest request from a man who understood what was happening but still hoped for mercy. Azrael could have ignored the request, should have ignored it. His instructions were clear. When a soul's time has come, it must be taken. Delay creates imbalance. Hesitation breeds chaos. But for the first time since his transformation, Azrael chose to wait. Just for a moment. Just to see what the farmer would do with the time he had asked for. The farmer turned his head slightly, his eyes focusing on his wife. He squeezed her hand with what little strength remained in his body. He whispered something so quiet that even Azrael had to lean in to hear. "Thank you for everything. I love you." The wife, unable to hear her husband's words but sensing something, leaned closer and kissed his forehead. She whispered back, her voice breaking, "I love you too. Go in peace." The farmer smiled, a small, gentle smile that carried more contentment than Azrael had seen in the faces of kings dying in palaces surrounded by gold. And then, without resistance, without fear, the farmer released his grip on life. His soul rose from his body smoothly, peacefully, ready now for the journey he had only needed a moment to prepare for. Azrael guided the soul through the veil, into the light that waits beyond mortal perception. He fulfilled his duty as he always did. But something had changed. A crack had formed in the armor of his indifference. A question had emerged that he could not immediately dismiss. What if his role was not just to take but to allow? What if the timing of death was not always rigid? What if there were moments when a soul, given just a few more seconds, could find peace that would otherwise elude them? He pushed the thought away. It was dangerous. It contradicted his instructions. It introduced subjectivity into a process that must remain objective. But the thought did not disappear. It lingered in the back of his consciousness, a seed planted that might one day grow into something he could not control. From that moment forward, Azrael began to pay closer attention to the souls he claimed, not to the manner of their death, but to their readiness. Some souls, he realized, were prepared long before their bodies failed. They had made peace with mortality, settled their affairs, said their goodbyes. Taking them was simple, clean, without complication. But others were not ready. They left behind words unspoken, wounds unhealed, love unexpressed. They departed in confusion, in anger, in grief that would echo through the lives of those they left behind. These deaths were messier, harder. They left residue that Azrael could feel clinging to him long after the soul had been delivered to its destination. He wondered, in the rare quiet moments between tasks, whether this was part of his punishment. Not the act of taking souls, but the awareness of what each taking meant. The understanding of the pain left in death's wake. Perhaps God had designed his role this way intentionally, ensuring that the angel of death would never become callous enough to enjoy his work, but never compassionate enough to refuse it. The centuries continued to roll past. Azrael claimed souls by the millions. He became a constant presence in the background of human history, the shadow that falls across every life at its appointed hour. He watched civilizations rise and crumble. He saw humanity invent, discover, create, and destroy. He was there at the beginning of every person's story and at the end, the one unchanging constant in a world defined by change. And through it all, he remained silent. He did not speak to the souls he guided unless absolutely necessary. He did not offer comfort or explanation. He did not answer the questions they inevitably asked. Where are we going? What happens next? Will I see my loved ones again? He had no answers to give, or perhaps he had answers but no permission to share them. His isolation deepened. He was surrounded constantly by souls in transition but connected to none of them. He was known by every angel in heaven but understood by none. He was the most necessary and the most unwelcome presence in all of creation, the one everyone needs eventually, but no one wants to see. Subscribe if you are starting to understand why death feels both familiar and terrifying, and keep watching because the biblical events are about to reveal the true power of the angel of death. Chapter 6. When death came to Egypt. The land of Egypt at the time of Moses was a place of stark contrasts. Magnificent temples rose toward the heavens, their walls covered in gold and precious stones. The Nile flowed rich and fertile, sustaining millions. Pharaoh's palace stood as a testament to human achievement, power concentrated in the hands of one man who believed himself divine. But beneath the splendor, there was suffering. The Hebrew people, descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, lived as slaves. They built the monuments that glorified Egypt's gods. They labored in the fields and the brick pits, their backs bent under the weight of oppression. They cried out to the God of their fathers, begging for deliverance, and God heard them. Moses, the reluctant prophet with the staff of power, had already brought 9 plagues upon Egypt. Water turned to blood. Frogs covered the land, lice, flies, disease, boils, hail, locusts, and darkness. Each plague grew more severe, each one a demonstration that the gods of Egypt were powerless before the God of Israel. But Pharaoh's heart remained hard. He refused to let the people go, so God declared a 10th plague, a final judgment, a demonstration of power so overwhelming that even Pharaoh would have no choice but to yield. At midnight, the firstborn of Egypt would die. Every firstborn, from the son of Pharaoh sitting on his throne to the firstborn of the prisoner in the dungeon. Even the firstborn of the livestock would not be spared. Only the Hebrew households, marked with the blood of a lamb on their doorposts, would be passed over. Azrael received his orders directly. There was no room for interpretation, no possibility of mercy. This was divine judgment, and he was the instrument through which it would be executed. As midnight approached, Azrael descended upon Egypt like a shadow falling across the sun. He moved through the streets of the capital, through the villages along the Nile, through the farms and fields and every dwelling where Egyptians slept. He did not need to search. He knew where every firstborn lay. He could sense their souls, burning bright with the particular quality that marks those who came first from their mother's womb. In Pharaoh's palace, the prince slept peacefully in a room filled with luxury. Servants stood guard outside. The finest physicians in the land were on call should the boy so much as sneeze. But against Azrael, none of these protections meant anything. He entered the room unseen and stood beside the prince's bed. The boy was young, perhaps 10 years old, innocent in the way children are innocent, bearing no personal responsibility for the sins of his father. But innocence does not exempt anyone from the consequences of living in a fallen world. The boy was firstborn. That was enough. Azrael extended his hand. The prince's soul separated from his body without struggle, without pain, without even waking. One moment the child was alive, dreaming whatever dreams children dream. The next moment he was gone. His body remained on the bed, unmarked, appearing simply to be asleep. But the animating force that made him a person had been taken. Throughout Egypt, the same scene repeated thousands of times. In the home of a merchant, the firstborn son stopped breathing. In the hovel of a beggar, the firstborn daughter's heart ceased to beat. In the stables and fields, animals fell where they stood. Death moved through Egypt like a scythe through grain, precise and unstoppable. Azrael felt nothing as he worked. This was not cruelty. This was not cruelty. This was judgment. The Egyptians had enslaved an entire people for generations. They had murdered Hebrew infants, throwing them into the Nile to control the population. They had mocked the God of Israel, challenging his authority, refusing to acknowledge his power. This plague was not random violence, it was consequence. But as dawn broke and the magnitude of what had happened became clear, the sound that rose from Egypt was unlike anything the world had heard before or since. It was the sound of a nation in collective agony. Every household had lost someone. There was not a single home without death. The wailing of mothers who found their children cold and lifeless. the cries of fathers who could not understand how their strong, healthy sons had died without warning, the howls of anguish from Pharaoh's palace as the king discovered his heir, his legacy, his future, taken in the night. Pharaoh, who had hardened his heart against every previous plague, who had watched his nation suffer rather than submit, finally broke. He summoned Moses in the early morning hours, his face twisted with grief and rage. "Take your people and go. Leave Egypt. Take your flocks and herds. Go and worship your God. Just leave before we are all dead." Azrael observed this from the borderland between worlds. He had executed God's command perfectly. Not a single Hebrew firstborn had been touched. Not a single Egyptian firstborn had been spared. The judgment was complete. The message delivered in the clearest possible terms. The God of Israel was not to be trifled with. His power was absolute. His patience had limits. But even Azrael watched the Hebrews prepare to leave, gathering their belongings and herding their animals toward freedom. He wondered, was this justice, or was it simply power? The firstborn of Egypt had not chosen to enslave the Hebrews. Many of them were too young to have any complicity in the system that oppressed God's people. They died not for their own sins, but for the sins of their fathers, their king, their nation. Azrael did not have the luxury of questioning. His role was not to judge the judgments, it was to carry them out. But the question remained, buried deep, adding to the weight he carried. A weight that grew heavier with every soul, every death, every moment when the gap between justice and mercy seemed impossibly wide. Like and share if you are beginning to see the Bible stories of judgment in a new way, because the next account will shake you even more deeply. Chapter 7. The night 185,000 souls departed. King Hezekiah of Judah was a righteous man in an age when righteousness was rare among kings. He trusted in the Lord God of Israel and sought to lead his people back to the covenant their ancestors had abandoned. He destroyed the high places where false gods were worshipped. He smashed the idols. He reinstituted the Passover. He did what was right in the eyes of God, and because of this, God was with him. But righteousness does not guarantee safety in a world governed by power and violence. The Assyrian Empire, the most brutal military machine the ancient world had ever seen, had conquered nation after nation. Their armies were vast, well-trained, and utterly merciless. Cities that resisted were destroyed, their populations slaughtered or enslaved. And now, Assyria had turned its attention to Judah. King Sennacherib of Assyria sent his forces to lay siege to Jerusalem. The Assyrian army was enormous, some accounts numbering it at over 180,000 soldiers. They surrounded the city, cutting off supply lines, preparing for a siege that would starve the inhabitants into submission. Sennacherib sent messengers to mock Hezekiah and the God he served. Where are the gods of the nations we have conquered? Did they save their people? What makes you think your God will save you? Hezekiah brought this mockery before the Lord. He spread out the threatening letters in the temple and prayed, God of Israel, enthroned between the cherubim, you alone are God over all the kingdoms of the earth. You made heaven and earth. Now, Lord, deliver us from Assyria's hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone are God. God heard Hezekiah's prayer, and God sent his response through the prophet Isaiah. The message was clear. Sennacherib would not enter Jerusalem. He would not shoot a single arrow into the city. He would return to his own land, and there he would die by the sword. As for his army currently surrounding Jerusalem, God would defend his city and his people. That night, as the Assyrian soldiers slept in their camps outside Jerusalem's walls, Azrael received his orders. It was a command unlike most others. Not a single soul to be taken, but thousands. Not the old and sick, but soldiers in their prime. Not over days or weeks, but in a single night. Azrael spread his wings and descended upon the Assyrian camp. The soldiers had no warning. They had gone to sleep confident in their strength, certain that Jerusalem would fall if every other city had fallen. They dreamed of plunder and victory, of the rewards that would come when they breached the walls and took the city. But they would never wait to see that victory. Azrael moved through the camp like wind through grass. His presence touched tent after tent, soldier after soldier. There was no struggle, no battle, no chance for resistance. Death simply came, swift and absolute. Hearts stopped. Breathing ceased. Life drained away as smoothly as water poured from a cup. Within hours, 185,000 Assyrian soldiers lay dead. The camp that had been filled with the sounds of men talking, fires crackling, horses neighing, fell completely silent. The greatest army in the world had been obliterated without a single weapon being raised against them. When morning came, the scouts from Jerusalem looked out from the walls and saw something impossible. The Assyrian camp was still. No movement, no sounds. Cautiously, they ventured closer. What they found defied comprehension. An entire army, dead where they had slept. No marks of violence on their bodies, no sign of disease. Just death, sudden and complete. King Sennacherib, who had not been in the camp that night, received the news with horror. His army, his pride, his instrument of conquest, wiped out in a single night by an enemy he could not see or fight. He ordered the immediate withdrawal of his remaining forces. The siege was broken. Jerusalem was saved. Sennacherib returned to Assyria, a broken man. His power was shattered, his reputation destroyed, and eventually, just as Isaiah had prophesied, he was assassinated by his own sons while worshipping in the temple of his God. The king who had mocked the God of Israel discovered too late that mockery has consequences. Azrael returned to the borderland between worlds, his task complete. He had ended 185,000 lives in a single night. The magnitude of it would have broken a mortal mind. But Azrael was not mortal, and his mind had been forged to endure such things. Still, even he could not help but notice the pattern. Death was not just a natural process of life reaching its end. Death was a weapon, a tool of divine justice. A demonstration of power that left no room for doubt about who truly governed the world. The soldiers who died that night were not, individually, more wicked than any other soldiers. They were following orders, serving their king, doing what soldiers have always done. But they had aligned themselves against God's people and God's purposes. And in doing so, they had made themselves targets of judgment. Azrael did not mourn them. He could not afford to, but he added their souls to the countless others he had guided, and he continued his eternal mission. Because death does not stop. It does not pause to reflect or reconsider. It simply is, constant and unavoidable, the one certainty in an uncertain world. Comment below what you think about divine judgment, and stay watching because the next biblical event reveals even more about the nature of death and mercy. Chapter 8, the plague that stopped at Jerusalem's gate. King David, the man after God's own heart, made a mistake born of pride. After decades of military victories and the expansion of Israel's borders, he ordered a census of his fighting men. On the surface, this seemed reasonable. A king should know the strength of his army. But God saw the true motive. David was trusting in numbers rather than trusting in the Lord. He was taking credit for victories that belonged to God alone. The prophet Gad came to David with a message from God. Because of your sin, you must choose your punishment. 3 years of famine, 3 months of fleeing from your enemies, or 3 days of plague in the land. Choose which judgment will fall upon Israel. David's response revealed his character even in sin. Let me fall into the hands of the Lord, for his mercy is very great, but do not let me fall into human hands. He chose the plague, trusting that God's judgment, however severe, would be tempered with mercy in a way that human enemies would not offer. So God sent a plague upon Israel. It was not a natural disease. This was supernatural judgment, and Azrael was its executor. He moved through the land from Dan to Beersheba, and death followed in his wake. 70,000 people died within 3 days. Unlike the Egyptian plague that targeted only firstborns or the Assyrian judgment that fell on soldiers, this plague was indiscriminate. It struck young and old, healthy and sick. righteous and wicked. The entire nation suffered because of the king's pride. Families who had nothing to do with David's decision watched their loved ones sicken and die within hours. Azrael carried out his orders without hesitation. He had learned long ago that questioning the judgments only made the burden heavier. His role was not to understand, but to execute. Still, even he could not ignore the scale of suffering. Entire villages emptied. Funeral pyres burned day and night. The wailing of the bereaved filled the air like a physical presence. On the third day, Azrael approached Jerusalem, the capital city where David's palace stood, where the Ark of the Covenant rested, where the heart of Israel's worship beat. If the plague continued, Jerusalem would be devastated. The death toll would reach into the hundreds of thousands. The nation would be crippled for generations. David had been watching the plague's progress with growing horror. The reports came in constantly. So many dead in this region, entire families wiped out in that village, and David knew with absolute certainty that this was his fault. His pride had brought this catastrophe upon his people. He put on sackcloth and fell on his face before God. I am the one who has sinned. I am the one who has sinned. I am the one who has done wrong. These people are innocent sheep. What have they done? Let your hand fall on me and my family, but stop this plague from destroying your people. As Azrael reached the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite on the outskirts of Jerusalem, he prepared to continue into the city. But then, something unprecedented happened. God spoke. Enough. Withdraw your hand. Azrael stopped. For the first time in 3 days of relentless death, he paused. The command was clear. The judgment was complete. Not because the full measure had been poured out, but because mercy had intervened. God directed David to build an altar on Araunah's threshing floor, to offer sacrifices there. David obeyed immediately, purchasing the property and offering burnt offerings and peace offerings. And God answered David's plea. The plague was halted. Jerusalem was spared. Azrael withdrew, his task incomplete by design. He'd been commanded to stop, and so he stopped. But the experience left an impression. This was the first time he could remember being told to halt a judgment before it ran its course. The first time mercy had interrupted justice in such a dramatic way. It raised questions he had suppressed for millennia. If God could stop a plague in response to repentance, why did he not do so more often? If one man's prayer could save a city, what about the countless prayers of the dying, begging for relief that never came? What was the difference between David and the thousands of others who had cried out for mercy and received none? Azrael did not have answers. Perhaps there were no answers, at least none that an angel of death was meant to understand. His role was not to comprehend the full picture. It was to serve as one piece of a vast, incomprehensible plan that stretched across time and eternity. But even pieces can wonder about the whole. Even instruments can question the hand that wields them. And though Azrael had become cold and distant, though he had buried his doubts beneath layers of duty, this moment at the threshing floor of Araunah reminded him that the judgments he executed were not arbitrary. They served purposes beyond his understanding, purposes that included not just justice but mercy, not just punishment but redemption. The plague that stopped at Jerusalem's gate became a turning point in Israel's history. The threshing floor where Azrael was commanded to halt his work eventually became the site of Solomon's temple, the place where Israel would worship God for generations. Death and mercy had met at that spot, and from their meeting, something sacred was born. Share this video if you are seeing the connection between judgment and mercy in a new light, because the next chapter will reveal what happens when souls refuse to accept their fate. Chapter 9. The souls that refused to leave. Not every soul goes willingly. Azrael learned this early in his mission, but the lesson deepened over millennia as he encountered every possible form of resistance, denial, and rebellion against the inevitable. Some souls cling to life out of fear. They have been taught to see death as annihilation, as the end of everything they are. The moment Azrael appears to claim them, they recoil, desperately trying to force their way back into bodies that no longer function. They scream, though no living person can hear them. They thrash, though they have no physical form to move. They beg, though Azrael is bound by commands he cannot disobey. Other souls refuse to leave because of unfinished business. A mother who dies in childbirth, desperate to know her baby will survive. A father killed suddenly, his children still young and vulnerable. A person who dies with a secret that will destroy their family if left unrevealed, or with a truth that will save someone if only they could communicate it. These souls hover at the threshold, not ready to cross, trying to linger in the world of the living just a little longer. Then there are the souls who refuse because they do not believe they are dead. This happens most often with sudden deaths, accidents, heart attacks, murders. One moment they are fully engaged in life, and the next they are outside their body, staring at it in confusion. They see Azrael and assume he is part of a dream or hallucination. They argue with him. "This is not real. I am not dead. I have things to do. Let me go back." But the most difficult souls are those who refuse because they know what awaits them. Murderers, tyrants, those who have spent their lives in deliberate cruelty and oppression. They can sense, even before crossing the veil, that judgment waits on the other side, and so they resist with everything they have, clinging to the edges of the mortal realm, trying to hide in the shadows, hoping that if they can just avoid Azrael long enough, they might escape their fate. Azrael encounters one such soul on a battlefield. The man was a warlord, responsible for the deaths of thousands. He burned villages, enslaved children, used rape as a weapon of terror. His soldiers feared him, his enemies hated him, and when he finally fell in battle, his own men cheered in secret relief. But when Azrael comes to claim him, the warlord's soul does not submit. Instead, it coalesces into a form of twisted darkness, drawing on the accumulated malice of a lifetime to create a barrier between itself and the angel of death. "You cannot take me. I will not go." The warlord's voice is defiant, edged with desperation masked as strength. Azrael does not respond with words. He has learned that arguing with resisting souls is pointless. Instead, he simply extends his hand, and the barrier the warlord has constructed begins to crumble. No amount of will, no accumulation of earthly power can stand against the authority Azrael carries. He is not acting on his own strength. He is the instrument of divine will, and that will cannot be denied. The warlord's defiance turns to panic as his constructed defenses dissolve. He tries to flee, his soul darting toward the physical realm, seeking any body, any vessel he might possess to avoid crossing over. But Azrael is faster. He has been doing this for eons. He knows every trick, every form of resistance, every desperate attempt to cheat death. His hand closes around the warlord's soul, and the battle is over. The soul's form collapses inward, all resistance draining away. What remains is not the powerful tyrant who terrorized nations, but a small, frightened consciousness that suddenly understands how utterly powerless it truly is. Azrael guides the soul through the veil, delivering it to the place of judgment. He does not know what happens after that. His role ends at the threshold. But he knows that judgment is real, that consequences exist beyond death, and that all the power a person accumulates in the mortal world means nothing once they step into eternity. There are also moments of unexpected beauty in the resistance. Azrael once claimed the soul of an artist who had spent her entire life creating works of profound beauty, paintings that captured something essential about the human experience, music that moved listeners to tears, poetry that revealed truths too deep for ordinary language. When Azrael appeared to guide her, she did not resist out of fear or denial. She resisted because she had just conceived of her masterpiece, the work that would surpass everything she had done before, the creation that would justify her existence and give meaning to all the struggle and suffering she had endured. "Please, just one more year. Just give me time to finish this last work." Azrael stood before her in silence. He knew that her request could not be granted. The time for her work was finished. The thread of her life had reached its end. No amount of artistic genius, no promise of future beauty could change that. But in that moment, looking at the soul of someone who loved creation so deeply that even death could not make her abandon it, Azrael felt something he had not felt in a very long time: respect. This soul was not resisting death out of attachment to comfort or pleasure or power. She was resisting because she wanted to give one more gift to the world, to create one more moment of beauty before the darkness took her. He guided her through the veil gently, with something that might have been called tenderness if angels of death could feel such things. And as her soul crossed over, she looked back one last time at the world she was leaving, at the canvas that would remain forever unfinished, and she whispered, "It was still worth it. Every moment was worth it." Those words stayed with Azrael longer than most. They reminded him that death, for all its inevitability and finality, did not diminish what came before it. A life well lived retained its value even when it ended. Love remained real even when the lovers were separated. Beauty created in time echoed into eternity. But these moments of reflection were rare. Most of the time, Azrael simply worked, soul after soul, life after life. The willing and the resistant, the peaceful and the violent, the ready and the desperate, all of them crossed through him into whatever waited beyond, and he remained, as always, the constant presence at the border between what is and what comes next. Subscribe if you have ever wondered what happens to souls that resist death, and keep watching because the next chapter reveals the moment Azrael finally stopped questioning everything. Chapter 10. The day Azrael stopped questioning, there came a day. Though calling it a day is imprecise, since time had long ago lost conventional meaning for Azrael, when he stood before God and spoke aloud the question that had haunted him since the beginning. Why, not why, death exists. He understood the theological necessity. Sin entered the world, death followed. The corruption of flesh cannot be eternal. Souls must be separated from failing bodies to continue their journey. All of this made sense within the framework of divine order. What he wanted to know was why it had to be him. Why was he the one chosen to walk this lonely path? Why was he the one who could never rest, never connect, never experience anything but the endless procession of endings? What had he done, either in service or in failure, to deserve this eternal isolation? God's response was not immediate. The silence stretched, and Azrael wondered if he had finally crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. If questioning his purpose was itself a sin that would result in judgment against him. But then God spoke, and the voice carried neither anger nor disappointment, only patient instruction, as a father teaching a son who is finally ready to understand. Azrael, do you know why I created death? To punish sin, to end the reign of corruption, to ensure that evil does not persist forever. Those are consequences, not purposes. I created death as a mercy. Azrael's confusion must have been evident because God continued without waiting for a response. Imagine a world where death does not exist, where souls remain trapped in bodies that decay and fail but never release them, where their old grow older and older, their minds fragmenting, their bodies becoming prisons from which they cannot escape, where the wounded suffer without end, their pain never ceasing because cessation is not possible, where evil men live forever, accumulating power across centuries, ruling with tyranny that has no natural limit. Is that the world you think I should have created? No. Azrael's answer was immediate and certain. Death is the door through which suffering ends and new possibilities begin. It is the boundary that gives time meaning, that makes choices matter, that allows for change and growth and redemption. Without death, there is only stagnation, an eternal present with no hope of transformation. God paused, letting the words settle into Azrael's understanding before continuing. And that is why I chose you. Not because you were the strongest or the wisest, not because you desired this role or because you had failed in some other task. I chose you because you alone had the capacity to hold the tension, to be just without being cruel, to be firm without being heartless, to carry out necessary work without losing sight of the fact that it is work that costs something. But I have lost sight of that. I have become cold, distant. I no longer feel compassion or mercy. I am exactly what the heralds wanted me to become, an instrument without emotion. You have not lost those things, Azrael. You have buried them because the pain of feeling them with every soul you claim would destroy you. But they are still there. I see them. And in the moments when they are most needed, they surface. You waited for the farmer to say goodbye to his wife. You guided the artist gently when you could have simply taken her. You feel the weight of the children who die too soon, even though you do not allow yourself to show it. You are not the heartless force you believe yourself to have become. You are simply a being carrying an unbearable burden as well as any being possibly could. Azrael had no response to this. He had spent millennia constructing walls around his heart, telling himself that he had transcended emotion, that he had become pure function, and now God was telling him that the walls were not as solid as he believed, that somewhere inside he was still the angel who questioned, who cared, who struggled with the weight of his mission. Your role is necessary, Azrael. I will not lie to you and say it is not a burden. It is perhaps the greatest burden any of my servants carry, but it is also a gift. You are the one who ensures that suffering does not last forever. You are the one who opens the door to eternity for every soul that is ready to pass through it. You are the guardian of the threshold, and without you, the balance of all creation would collapse. Is there no end to this? Will I carry this burden for all eternity? As long as there is life that must end, there must be death to end it. When the final age comes and all things are made new, when death itself is swallowed up in victory, then and only then will your mission be complete. Until that day, you will continue, not because you are cursed, but because you are trusted. The conversation ended there. Azrael returned to his work with a shift in perspective so subtle he almost did not notice it. He was still the angel of death. He still claimed souls without hesitation or mercy. He still walked the lonely path between worlds, isolated from the warmth of fellowship and connection. But he no longer questioned why. He understood now that his role was not punishment but purpose, that he had been chosen not because he was expendable, but because he was essential, that the burden he carried, though heavy beyond measure, was also meaningful beyond his ability to fully comprehend. He thought of all the souls he had guided, the millions upon millions who had passed through his hands, each one a story, each one a life lived for better or worse, each one a journey that began in the mind of God and would continue into eternity, the brief span of mortal existence just one chapter in a much longer tale. And for the first time in ages beyond counting, Azrael felt something that might have been peace. Not happiness, not joy, but acceptance. The deep, quiet acceptance that comes when a being stops fighting against their nature and embraces the purpose for which they were created. He spread his dark wings and returned to the world of mortals. There were souls waiting. There would always be souls waiting, and he would be there to guide them, one after another, until the end of all things. Not as a curse, not as a punishment, but as a calling, the calling of the angel of death. Share this video if you have ever struggled to accept your own purpose, and stay watching because the final chapter holds the most important message of all. Chapter 11, What Death Teaches the Living. If Azrael could speak directly to you right now, what would he say? After witnessing billions of deaths across thousands of years, after guiding souls from every culture, every era, every possible circumstance of life and ending, what wisdom would the angel of death offer to those still walking in the light? He would not tell you to fear him. Fear accomplishes nothing except to poison the time you have left. He would not tell you to deny death's reality or pretend it will not come for you. Denial is just another form of fear, dressed in more acceptable clothing. Instead, he would tell you something far more challenging. Live as if you understand what death truly means. Death is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It is the force that reminds you every single day that your time is limited, that your opportunities are finite, that the people you love will not always be here, and neither will you. This is not meant to make you despair. It is meant to wake you up to the preciousness of what you have right now, in this moment, before it slips away forever. How many people spend their lives waiting for the right time to say, "I love you," waiting for the perfect moment to apologize, waiting until they have more money, more time, more security, before they do the things that actually matter. And then Azrael comes, as he always comes, and all the waiting was for nothing. The right time was always now. The perfect moment was every moment you let pass by. You do not know when your thread will snap. You do not know if you have decades left or only hours. This uncertainty is not a curse. It is a gift. It means that today, right now, you have the opportunity to live in a way that you will not regret when you finally meet the angel of death face to face. What would you regret if you died tonight? Not the things you failed to accomplish, not the money you did not make, or the status you did not achieve. You would regret the love you did not express, the forgiveness you did not offer, the time you did not spend with the people who mattered most. You would regret the moments you traded for distractions, the hours you wasted on anger and resentment, the days you spent worrying about things that, in the end, did not matter at all. Azrael has seen it all. He has guided the souls of kings who died with vast wealth and zero peace. He has claimed the lives of paupers who departed with nothing but were surrounded by love until their final breath. He has witnessed the powerful discover, in their last moments, that power cannot save them. He has watched the humble realize that their simplicity was wisdom all along. Here's what death teaches the living. Relationships are everything. The connections you build with other souls are the only things that transcend the boundary between life and eternity. Everything else you accumulate, every possession you hoard, every achievement you pride yourself on, all of it stays behind when Azrael comes. But love, genuine love, that echoes forward, that leaves ripples that continue long after your body has returned to dust. Death teaches you to forgive, holding grudges, nurturing bitterness, keeping score of wrongs. These things feel important when you believe you have unlimited time. But when you understand that your time is short, that the person you are angry with might be gone tomorrow, or you might be gone before you have the chance to make peace, suddenly forgiveness stops being a noble ideal and becomes an urgent necessity. Death teaches you to be present. The past is gone. You cannot change it. The future is not guaranteed. You cannot control it. All you truly have is this moment right now, the person sitting across from you, the beauty of the sunset you are too distracted to notice, the sound of laughter from a room away. These moments are your life, not the highlights you post on social media or the memories you plan to make someday. Your life is happening right now, and death is the force that reminds you to pay attention to it. Death teaches you humility. It does not matter how important you think you are. It does not matter how many people know your name or how much influence you wield. When your time comes, you will be just as powerless as the beggar, just as vulnerable as the child, just as subject to judgment as every other soul that has ever lived. This is not meant to diminish you. It is meant to free you from the exhausting delusion that you are the center of the universe. And perhaps most importantly, death teaches you that how you live matters, not because your accomplishments will be remembered forever, but because the way you treat people, the choices you make, the love you give or withhold, all of it shapes not just your life, but the lives of everyone you touch. You are creating ripples with every action, and those ripples will continue after you are gone. Azrael would tell you that he has seen people die well and people die badly. Those who die well are not necessarily those who lived the longest or achieved the most. They are the ones who lived with intention, who loved deeply, who forgave quickly, who were present to their lives instead of always looking ahead to the next thing. They are the ones who, when he comes, are able to look back without overwhelming regret and look forward without paralyzing fear. Those who die badly are those who spent their lives running from the very truth Azrael embodies. They chased distractions and called it living. They built walls around their hearts and called it protection. They delayed and postponed and promised themselves that someday, later, when things were different, they would start actually living, and then someday never came. You are going to die. There is no avoiding it, no bargaining with it, no escaping it, but you do have a choice about how you live in the meantime. You can live in denial, pretending death is something that happens to other people. You can live in fear, so paralyzed by mortality that you never truly engage with life. Or you can live in acceptance, understanding that the temporary nature of existence is exactly what makes it precious. Every moment you have is a gift that will never come again. Every person you love is a treasure that will one day be taken from you or you from them. Every sunrise, every conversation, every ordinary Tuesday is an opportunity to create meaning, to express love, to be fully human in a world that constantly tempts you to be less than that. Azrael cannot give you more time. That is not within his power to grant, but he can remind you that the time you have, however much or little it may be, is enough if you use it wisely. Enough to love, enough to forgive, enough to live with integrity and intention, enough to leave behind something more valuable than possessions or achievements, the memory of a soul that truly lived. So what will you do with your time? Will you wait for the perfect moment that never comes? Will you hold grudges that poison your days? Will you trade your precious hours for distractions and regrets? Or will you live as if you understand the truth that Azrael knows better than anyone? That life is short, death is certain, and the only thing that matters in the end is how fully you loved, how deeply you lived, and how much light you brought into the darkness. The angel of death is not coming for you someday far in the future. He is walking toward you right now with every tick of the clock, with every beat of your heart. Not as a threat, but as a reminder. You are alive today. What will you do with this irreplaceable gift? Azrael would tell you one final thing. When your time comes, when he stands before you and extends his hand, the only question that will matter is this: did you live? Not did you succeed, or did you accumulate, or did you impress others? Did you actually live? Did you love the people in your life? Did you forgive and ask for forgiveness? Did you notice the beauty? Did you take the risks that mattered? Did you become the person you were created to be? Answer that question with your life, starting today, because tomorrow is not promised, and the angel of death does not give second chances. He only gives endings. Make sure that when your ending comes, you can look back on a beginning and a middle that were worth the journey. That is what death teaches the living. That is the message Azrael has carried for eternity, and that is the truth you must embrace if you want to truly live before you die.